Hey, hi, how you going? It's your mate Valstrine, and today I'm going to show you how to build an aesthetic farming base like the one that you're seeing now. Let's check it out. So I actually got the inspiration for this one after seeing an amazing build posted by a member of my community Discord that I instantly fell in love with and knew I needed to recreate for myself. The build's primary function is food production with a focus on cakes, and I tried to modify the original design by giving this build a slightly grungier tone and give it a sort of overgrown, rundown industrial look. So to achieve this, the first thing I did was pick a new location, and I ended up opting for the autumn biome over on the Faybreak Island at -918, -1173, because the lighting here has this orange tint to it, which I think creates a really unique aesthetic. And beyond that, I also chose to mix in more of the metal texture rather than construct it fully out of glass. But all in all, I've got 20 plantations, 2 ranches, 2 mills, 2 giant ovens, 4 logging sites, and 4 skillfruit trees. But just before we get into the building process itself, remember, if you enjoy this content, like, comment, subscribe, and even try out the new hype feature, which helps push content from small creators. But with all of that out the way, let's get started. So to start with, you're going to need to cut down a bunch of trees, and then when you've got yourself a nice clear patch of land, you can go ahead and lay a 14 by 14 foundation. And you will notice that I'm starting from this dirt mound because that's the highest point in the area, and you want to ensure that none of your foundation has to clip through the ground. You also want to make it so that the outside perimeter of the foundation is all metal, while the interior 12 by 12 square is timber. Once you've got the foundation in place, you can go ahead and add your PAL box directly in the center by finding the junction of the 7th tile from each corner, and then you can go ahead and add the walls on the face that I'm going to refer to as the front entrance, and you want to create this pattern using a combination of metal and glass tiles. Next, you can go ahead and mirror that on the opposite side before working on the east and west faces to start filling in all of the space between. So all up, there's going to be 3 different heights, and the entire design is put together such that the metal tiles create a sort of framework on each of the edges around the glass like you're seeing now. After the frame is done, you can start on the roof areas, which are going to start off as completely glass for the lower 2 sections, but for the uppermost section, you want to wrap 1 tile of metal roofing around the outside and then fill in the middle area with any old tile, because this section is only going to serve as a temporary scaffolding. So you can see here I'm using the stone, and once you've done that, it should be looking like this and you're ready to start adding the details. The first detail I like to add is to swap out some of the glass tiles with metal ones just to break up a bit of the symmetry and give it more of a factory look. And there's not really any pattern to this, you just kind of want to randomize it as much as you can. Next, go ahead and add the angled roof, which is going to be 2 tiles high on both sides, and I like to start this one up by placing only the metal tiles, but then I like to switch over to the glass tiles and replace every second tile so that you get this sort of zigzag pattern before finally coming back for a 3rd pass and replacing just a couple of random metal tiles with metal stairs so that you get this sort of open vent effect. Now you can go ahead and delete all of the stone underneath so that you'll end up being able to see the angled roof from the inside before finally adding the walls to each end, for which I like to use an alternating combination of both metal and glass. After that, you want to head inside and place 3 pillars centralized underneath the middle roof section, which are each going to be 3 tiles off of the wall and apart from one another. And then you want to go ahead and build each of these up 3 tiles until they touch the roof, but then delete the bottom 2 and add 2 metal tiles and 2 glass tiles on opposite corners to create these little panels, which I like to place lights on. Now we can start working on the internal platform, which is going to start with a wooden wall that runs the entire length of the room and is 3 tiles forward from the eastern wall. Then come back to the 4th tile from each end and replace it with a boxed cutout for your stairs. And once you're done with that, lay all of the upper floor panels and then add glass fence along the edge. Now you can go ahead and delete the middle 2 pillars to create this entryway to what will end up becoming our living quarters, and then add pillars to each junction so that you end up with a final result that looks like this. And that concludes all of the structural elements, so now you're ready to start decorating, and I like to kick this off by adding in all of my wall vine, which you're going to want in abundance to make the place look overgrown. So to make this look nice and natural, I like to ensure that I move in a somewhat randomized direction as I crawl along all of the walls so that you avoid too many straight lines or anything like that, and feel free to place this both internally and externally. Next, let's get some electricity generation going by adding a 2x5 extension to our foundation on the eastern side, where we're going to house 3 large generators with some accumulators, which will be fully enclosed with walls that are 2 tiles high and a roof. Now let's add our hot springs in the middle of the upper level, and then let's create some garden beds where I like to put the big Lylene statues right in the middle with some fountains on each side before adding the lampposts and then all of the plants surrounding it, just to fill it out and make it look really lively. For the living quarters, I like to line the entire floor with red carpet and then scatter a bunch of pal beds, tables, ottomans, and other colorful decorations all over the place, and this is also where I like to put the feed box. Now let's add the ovens directly across from the hot springs, add the logging sites, and now we're ready to add one of the most critical features, which are the plantations, for which I'm going to use the stacking method. So if you're not familiar with the stacking method, essentially you want to stack the wooden benches and place them in a T formation, which is going to serve as a base for each plantation. This is a great way to save space, and you can stack as many of these on top of one another as you like, but for this build, I'm only going to go 1 layer off of the ground so that it still looks realistic, and this means that the top of my T only needs to be 2 benches high, and then the long section of the T can just be 1 bench high and 2 benches long. After that, you'll need to snap the plantation to the top bench, and then you can go ahead and delete all of the benches and the walls, which I was just using to get my positioning right, before finally snapping a plantation below but adjacent to your floating plantation so that you can use that plantation to snap your ground level plantation underneath. And there you go, we have our double stacked plantations ready to farm. Then on the western side, you want to extend your foundation with another platform, but this time it's going to be 6x3 and is where we're going to place the ranches to provide all of our honey. And finally, you can now go ahead and build up the exterior areas, and as you can see, I've added a long boulevard style walkway that makes accessing the base area look a lot nicer. But remember, if you are going to build outside of the base perimeter, you will need to turn off the decay timer in your world settings. Now, as for the PAL setup, I'm not going to be claiming that this is the most optimal setup, but it is going to be more than sufficient for all of your needs. I've not had any issues with it so far. So we've got 1 Dazzy Noct for electricity generation and some transporting. I've got the 2 bee guards for ranching, and then I've got the Butchie Noct here for kindling and wood cutting. And as you can see, I have got all of my PALs leveled up to level 5 work suitability for all the work suitabilities that they have. Now that the books are nice and easy to get, I've got the Shroomer Noct here, who's going to have the important passive, which is going to improve the sanity of all the pals in the base. And then we've got Jelliet and 2 Gelroys to get the best out of their watering ability, because they're going to get increased watering speeds when you have both in base. We've got Lulu, whose ability is going to increase the speed that our crops grow. And then I've got 3 Pronelias to stack their ability, which is going to increase the yield that we get from crops. And then finally, I've got 3 Memogs for transporting. But that's everything for this one. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the build, and if you do want any extra help with any of the details within the base, if you want to know where any of the extra furnishing is or anything like that, feel free to join the community Discord, which I'll leave a link to in the description down below, and just reach out to me in there. I can send some screenshots or talk you through, we can troubleshoot, whatever it may be. But with all of that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.